didn't need a plumber. Now you're in a panic. When life throws you a surprise with a clogged drain, plugged or leaky toilet, broken pipe, leaky faucet or water heater, or a bathroom or kitchen plumbing upgrade, whatever. Just call Bryant Air Conditioning, Heating, Electrical, and Plumbing, 467-1111. Keep that number handy, 467-1111. Or go to BryantLincoln.com. Bryant Air Conditioning, Heating, Electrical, and Plumbing. We do whatever it takes.
Empower a child today with the Teammates Mentoring Program. Hope is only a conversation away when you choose to share your talent, time, and heart with a child. Together, you can build a relationship based on strengths and chart a brighter future, 1 week at a time. Find out how you can be a mentor by visiting LincolnTeammates.org. Become what you needed as a kid by joining the Teammates Mentoring Program today.
Who wants free diamonds? This holiday season, as a thank you for shopping with us, Sartor Heyman Jewelers is giving you free diamonds. Now through December 6th, receive a pair of sparkling diamond stud earrings, a stunning diamond pendant, or a gorgeous diamond tennis bracelet for free with your qualifying purchase. We only have a limited number to give away, so once they're gone, they're gone. Don't wait on this one. Visit Sartor Heyman Jewelers, where your gift shopping shines brighter. In Lincoln at South Point Mall, downtown, and in Grand Island on State Street.
At Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical, we're ready, reliable, and recommended. Water heater acting up or your sump pump on the fritz? Call Action. Summer's around the corner. Is your AC working? Are you sure? Call Action. Electrical problems? I'm telling you, call Action. Call Action for a free same-day estimate or trusted second opinion. You heard that right, a free same-day estimate. 402-423-6960. ActionLincoln.com.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Koppel Chevrolet GMC, wanting to thank you all again for your continued service. November is off and running. Check this out. Get up to $12,000 off or 0% financing on select new vehicles. We have great lease specials with new Trax and Trailblazers starting at $299 per month and new Blazer EVs leasing for $399. Great payments, discounts, and of course, 0% financing. So make that short drive down 144th Street or check us out online at koppelcars.com. You'll be glad you did. All finance with approved credit, leases with $2,500 down.
This isn't any regular heat. This is nuclear heat. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. Bringing you the latest from the Square Circle on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Here is your host, Jake Bockoven.
Yes, great to be with you here on a Sunday night. It is Nuclear Heat here on 93.7 The Ticket, and we've got plenty of wrestling to talk, so go ahead and find a seat, settle down, and let's get into an hour of wrestling. Sometimes we come on here, we're kind of honest, we tell you it's not a great week as far as the action in ring. That is not the case here today. It is finally Tiffy time in WWE. Of course, Raw on Netflix debuts tomorrow, January 6th, and with it, the returns of several top stars in the WWE, both of the past and of the present. The Rock, Logan Paul, and John Cena's farewell tour going to start. Of course, you've loaded this show up to be basically a premium live event with Roman against Solo, Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, and certainly Jey Uso against Drew McIntyre got set up this week. CM Punk and Seth Rollins. Very interesting, a way to finish off Raw last week. So plenty to talk about, a lot of fun to be had. And I say, if you can tell, I'm enjoying my wrestling. Augie, I usually start the show by asking you, Augie Pena, my tag team partner and Nuclear Heat contributor here. How are you enjoying the wrestling?
It's been pretty fun. It's I think they're ramping it up now, Royal Rumble season, as we said, the Netflix special, or era starting on Monday, WrestleMania, all that. They got some exciting things. And of course, I'm a huge Rock to hear that The Rock is going to be there as well. And John Cena. I think that's huge. And that's really got me glued and ready for Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just a day away and a few days from SmackDown. So as usual, we'll go through the events of SmackDown and Raw and then preview the upcoming week, which is pretty much focused around this Raw on Netflix debut here. And each one of those stars, those names that we're talking about, add a little bit different to the expectation moving forward. But sometimes we start with Raw, sometimes we start with SmackDown. I do want to start with SmackDown this week, and we can get into how this show progressed. But again, when there's a headliner, I don't like to necessarily ignore it. And this one was Tiffany Stratton, Tiffy time, right? Becoming the women's world champion here. And it was, we've been talking about it. We've been frustrated by the way that they've kind of set this up just because there's a tease every week. Well, by doing that, then, that kind of sets up for today where there was a tease. I don't know how much, I mean, the crowd was red hot for it. They were very excited when Tiffany Stratton's music hit. Of course, this being during the Nia Jax match, and Nia Jax, the reigning champion. And when her music hits, people goes crazy. And then they continued to kind of swerve us, right? They had looked like Tiffany was going to come in cash in. Instead, she throws the referee over the barricade and then uses uses her weapon, uses the briefcase as a weapon to allow Nia Jax to get the win over Naomi. And then only when they were celebrating did she then decide to turn on Naomi with Candice LeRae involved, Bianca Belair certainly involved. She hit a KOD finally on Nia Jax. They've kind of been telling a story of how difficult that may be, right, in a match. But she was finally able to do that to set up Tiffany for the prettiest moonsault ever. To be clear, for those that didn't watch, Bianca Belair wasn't doing it out of the kindness of her heart. She also got thrown over the announce table. So they did this in a way that I thought really restored a lot of what we thought of Tiffany Stratton coming into WWE when she earned this. Remember, she took the NXT title from Becky Lynch, so she kind of came in swinging at everybody. This was certainly a lot of the women's division at the top here to outsmart and perform and finally to crown Tiffany Stratton the women's world champion and start Tiffy time officially in WWE. So great in the moment. Also, just a relief that they didn't go down any Austin Theory kind of side of things. If you recall as well, there's been no women's world women's cash-in that has been unsuccessful. Would have felt really silly if they did that here with how over she is with the crowd. You can tell we are finally relieved. We're happy. Tiffany Stratton, it's Tiffy time. What were your thoughts on how they presented this, Augie?
Yeah, about time. They really kept us, just really frustrated for the longest time. But I thought, they executed. This is what they always do. We complain about the Money in the Bank. Whoever wins that briefcase, feeling like, they should cash in here and then finally just doing it then, I thought was amazing because, I also, watching it here at home, seeing her, cashing it in and then not and helping them out. I was like, this is just getting ridiculous. And then she finally does it. And, it just kind of brings out some great joy because as you said, Tiffany's just a great talent that they kind of were bearing, they were doing kind of the opposite of what you were hoping with the briefcase. But now, after kind of what you explained happened there, she kind of just put herself in the middle of like 3 to 4 feuds, that she could potentially have, not just with Nia going after her, but Bianca, Naomi, Candice, they're all going to be gunning after her because she did something to them in this. And I think that's perfect. Right before WrestleMania season. So, this is the best time. And then especially with, SmackDown going to 3 hours, which is why I think it was a bigger surprise because it wasn't even the main event. It was, I think, the second hour when they did it. So they really got us there. And, she's now going to be the top women's, competitor at the right time. And I think that was great to do. And, I'm excited to see kind of what they do from here on out with her.
Yeah, very exciting. Like you said, I mean, it was somewhat debated over Twitter whether that should have been the main event and the way you leave. But again, part of it's kind of setting up the crowd to believe it's just going to be another false cash in, and that's kind of what you're thinking too. Is okay, well, probably not going to happen here. We've seen this over and over again. Not even in the main event slot, so it's probably not happening tonight. And so there were several ways that they kind of took you along that path of thinking it wasn't going to happen. And again, it can be frustrating to watch it kind of play out just because of the false cash-ins, but it's a very effective way to make you wonder when it's actually going to happen. And over the years, we're not going to look back and say, what I didn't really like was how long they did that. Like, well, that can be forgotten. This moment that it happened will replay for several cash-in. They always do the kind of the replays of the cash-ins. This was a big one. This was an exciting one. So we'll see kind of where they go from here. Like you said, so many different routes with her that they can go, to include all those women involved, like you just said. Of course, the Royal Rumble coming up. So just a lot of different ways to go, and very exciting times moving forward there. So that's a little bit of what happened later in the show. Again, I think the biggest part of the show, I do think it probably, they kind of teased these cash-ins even in main event spots, because these girls have kind of been scrapping around. So I do think that they probably could have done that in the main event. The new bloodline against the OG bloodline was kind of rinse and repeat stuff that we've seen before. So I thought that would have been a very great way to leave the first 3 hour of SmackDown. First SmackDown with 3 hours to it. But it was saved for this. And of course, going through all this, it's been a while that she's had the briefcase, and so you figured they'd want to highlight it somewhere. And at least here you could say, okay, this is the first 3 hour of SmackDown. A little bit of a surprise, but understanding that they need to make something happen, in this. And certainly 3 hours of SmackDown is being overshadowed by Raw, especially throughout their own company. I mean, they're promoting that over and over and over again. They set up this basically premium live event for it. But they did get something big out of there. So let's go back through the rest of SmackDown to kind of figure out what's going on throughout the rest of the show. They did open up with Cody Rhodes coming out. He mentioned he was not cleared to wrestle. To a lot of people's surprise, Drew McIntyre. Music hits and he comes out. And Drew McIntyre, obviously, kind of on this OG bloodline revenge tour, if you will, borrow from Liv. And so Drew McIntyre coming out was a little bit of a surprise. He ends up hugging Cody Rhodes, telling him he's going to need a friend to watch his back. And so it was just kind of odd. And then very quickly after he told him to watch his back, KO attacks, and they have to be separated. This to open up SmackDown again. I thought the Drew McIntyre twist to it gave it something, which is good because Cody Rhodes and KO still have a month to go before you kind of get to that meeting at Royal Rumble. So I don't know if there's going to be much McIntyre involvement moving forward, but it's always good to kind of involve him in several different things because, he's obviously, again, we talk about it, one of the hottest things going. I mean, he interrupted the opening of Raw this week as well. So Drew McIntyre kind of sticking his nose everywhere.
Yeah. I think one of the important things, too, I took from this, as you said, kind of his storyline is I think they kind of dropped a hint that he may have permanently made that move to SmackDown. I think it was Cody that mentioned the transfer portal, too. So that does say, he's probably going to stick his nose in it. And, I know sometimes we can say if somebody's in too many storylines, it could be too much, but I actually enjoyed this one. I thought it was fun. He and Cody did have that tag team run with the tag titles back like 10 years ago or something like that. So, kind of reigniting that and him trying to, be in that whole, yeah, I'm your friend. But then, obviously we kind of know what Drew's all about right now. So I think this would be a fun inclusion. And just, these two, I mean, just Cody and Drew, and then KO, I mean, they're just great on the mic and kind of what they do. So I thought it was a great way to kick off SmackDown. And, like you said, Cody and Kevin have a whole month until the Royal Rumble. And they're, hey, Drew's been taking everybody out, that's been aligned with Roman Reigns. He's on kind of that, like you said, that revenge tour. So it just makes sense to kind of include him here just so that way the Kevin's Cody Owens thing doesn't get stale. Because apparently, those two can't be together in a ring because then, they have to get separated by, security and Nick Aldis and all that. You kind of have to be worried that in the story, one of them might get quote unquote injured even more. And so, if you have Drew McIntyre in there kind of being a double agent, the way I'll put it, I'm not just in it for himself. I think that adds a nice twist and can keep the story fresh, which is something that's really needed.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if McIntyre is going to be involved moving forward, or again, if this was just something to do to keep this storyline moving along without really making a major bump. I mean, there's only so many different ways you can separate a brawl.
Yeah.
So and I say that, but they'll continue to do that leading up to it. But so this added a little bit of flair to it and a little bit of, like you said, some pondering to do about what the future of this angle is going to look like. We get into the second match of the night on SmackDown. Andrade against Shinsuke Nakamura. Kind of interesting in that it wasn't a championship match, right? I thought, I always find it weird when you have a champion fighting a challenger that is very much has been in the mix for that championship, and just to go by it. Sometimes that can be used to pin the champion. Not necessarily the case here. Good in-ring action and an interesting spot where Shinsuke basically dragged Andrade when he was on the top in the corner there to slam his head down in the ring post, and that looked effective. And certainly was. Shinsuke, just for good measure, hit a Kinshasa. I can't say it. Kinshasa at the end for the win. LA Knight appears, comes down to chase Nakamura out of the ring and challenge him again for this U.S. title. So Andrade definitely kind of feels like the third wheel of this. Always kind of has. Somebody's got to take that spot. He's excellent in ring, and interestingly enough as a character to kind of be in that third spot. But we get back to Shinsuke and LA Knight. Maybe no surprise here. Also notable, this is as our first match of the night, the mat is blue. So SmackDown maybe going with a new look there. I think you can do that with blue. I don't know if you could do that with red. So I'm interested to see what they do with Raw. I mean, they could, but for a full show or a new look, I don't know if I necessarily like it. Also, no Prime logo. So I thought for a second, well, maybe Logan Paul's going to separate himself from WWE for a minute before we found out today he's going to be there for Monday on Netflix. But that aside, what did you kind of think about Andrade and Shinsuke, and then certainly LA Knight getting back in the mix here?
Yeah, it was a good match. These two, there's no doubt they're great performers. I think it's always just their ability to speak to the crowd. Their work on the mic that quote unquote holds them back on there. But Andrade, you kind of got to feel bad because it feels like he's kind of just been jobbing since he got back. He went on this 7-game series against Carmelo there for a while, and then he's had his shot at this title and he just keeps losing it. As you said, he's kind of just a guy that they chose to be the third wheel the whole time on there. But it kind of keeps LA and Shinsuke away from having to just wrestle each other every time. At least every 2 weeks or so, because we know these two are gonna feud a couple times for that title. And then we kind of talked about it. We assumed LA Knight would be going back for that title. So I think they made the right choice there with that. And then I'm actually glad you didn't hear about the ring with the blue, and you mentioned it for Raw. So they actually spoiled it and announced that it's going to be a black ring and it's going to have like 8 different company logos on it. And the middle one is Fortnite. So so they confirmed it, all that. So it's a black ring and it's going to have like Fortnite in the middle and then just a bunch of different other company logos on the inside. So yeah, they're kind of overkilling it with that. On there, and that's going to be at least for the first Raw on Netflix, but I think that's kind of another way they're going to be making their money there. So I guess we'll have to see if that distracts from what goes on in the ring post what they have on the ring there. So
yeah, and it is interesting again if you get into kind of the details. I mean, Vince stayed away from logos. I mean, it's not like they just kind of thought of this and all of a sudden like, hey, that's a great idea. But like they've stayed away from logos purposely, like you said, to kind of keep the action in the ring or to keep the whatever action you've got going. Obviously, as we know in wrestling, not always necessarily focused on the ring, but certainly in this case, what we're talking about here. And so, kind of that change that we're kind of going through here. I don't think it would take long. UFC, they've got plenty of stuff going on. I remember when the NBA kind of brought in the patch, and we're all thinking, well, how's it? You get used to it pretty quickly. But it is interesting again to see kind of what Netflix's spin on WWE and what they want out of it is going to be. LA Knight, by the way, and Shinsuke set now for a U.S. title match this week. interference, LA Knight clean win, Shinsuke continuing. I mean, what do you think is the way they'll go here?
We talked about it. They can't be hot potatoing titles and expect us to take them serious. So, LA Knight's my guy. I'm a fan, but I think in order to keep the title relevant there and make Shinsuke make them look decent, there's got to be an interference by Andrade somewhere. Because I also don't want to see LA Knight take that clean loss there. So yeah, I think there's got to be an interference and you protect them both, and maybe at the Royal Rumble a Saturday Night Main Event I think comes before the Royal Rumble. I think we'll probably see them duke it out there for hopefully the time for the trilogy, and whoever gets it can win the title and just move on there.
Well, Andrade certainly, if you're looking for an interference, Andrade would make sense. We mentioned he's the third wheel. Carmelo might even make a little bit more sense because he's been at the third or fourth wheel in this thing, and it is more on the heel side. So we'll see what they do. Again, I think it's going to be tough to get a clean finish out of there. A quick, like you said, hot potato. If LA Knight just kind of wins it back, I don't know. It seems I don't know if it was worth getting it off him then, that quickly, and for after giving Shinsuke a heck of a hard time for the last several years of getting a win and especially a major victory, to give it to him for 2 or 3 weeks, and it might have been a month and a half now, but he doesn't fight week in and week out for it. Would seem like too quick of a switch. So we'll see what they do. Sometimes they have different ideas and they'll run with it, but at least we have that matchup to look forward to this next Friday night. In the back, Pretty Deadly kind of scraps it up with Legado del Fantasma. Again, this is over Pretty Deadly. I'm going to get lost here. There's too many tag teams involved, but telling one of the other tag teams that DIY attacked them, and it ended up, I can get it. It's because now Legado del Fantasma is upset. Telling them that Legado del Fantasma attacked the Street Profits rather than it being DIY, who we kind of figured out who that was. So at least you've got a lot of tag teams going at it, and this sets up for some interference actually later in the night. Then we get to Michin versus Piper Niven. Interesting booking here. Chelsea Green, who is your U.S. Title holder, and so far hasn't seen in-ring action since winning that. And she certainly specializes on the mic, can go in the ring, but still kind of wondering if this is the way to go. They've kind of set it up for her and Michin, or for Michin to be her first big time opponent here. And of course that kind of a feud kind of predating the U.S. title win there for Chelsea Green. So standard kind of stuff. Michin against the tag team partner or the friend of the champion here. And Michin ultimately does get a win. Piper Niven, great in the ring. I always think with her size, just the impact of some of the moves she makes, really, again, when you get to the feeling like this is some real contact there, It's hard to avoid. So I thought she did good there for the limited role that Chelsea Green had, which was to be stared down and even twerked at by Michin before this thing was done. She did come out with U.S. gear, which is always interesting for a Canadian wrestler to come out with U.S. gear, but she has the U.S. title, so maybe kind of leaning into that. But a little bit disappointed we haven't seen more out of Chelsea Green, or they didn't kind of do more with this. They gave her a promo in the middle of the ring last week, and they had Michin come in and chase her out there. So it makes sense as far as building this fight, but I just thought that Chelsea Green was red hot, and any getting her in action pretty quickly would have been pretty good. But they're kind of going with this route, celebrate her championship, set up her opponent.
Yeah, I think they're just kind of in a hard spot because I thought the tournament for the U.S. Championship was great. You look around and you kind of struggle to find who maybe a legitimate good opponent could be. So they decided to go, with Michin, who we've talked about. That was Chelsea Green's first ever televised on the main, NXT or maybe even the main roster match. So they've got some legitimate history there on there. And yeah, I'm a little disappointed with it as well. She's great. She's must see. That's the way it is. Everybody has a great time, whether she's, backstage, doing a gimmick or she's in the ring, people are booing and cheering her. She's got the crowd's attention. Everybody wants to see her in the ring. In the past 2 weeks, like you said, it's been 3 weeks now since she's won it. She wasn't even there the first episode. And then the last two, she was crowned and then just kind of stands around and, watches Piper Niven do her thing. And just it's kind of the distraction on the end, that I just don't think that's what you want to do. And then we've talked about it. I thought Mishin, I thought that was kind of a disappointing first, feud she could have there. So maybe, they'll do it again here at the next Saturday night main event, which I even think that's too far away. Maybe they'll do it, on the next week's SmackDown, something like that, because we know it's Mishin that's going to be the number one contender now here. So they just got to go ahead and do that and allow Chelsea to wrestle a little bit more, be a defending champ, and then, go on to her second feud against someone maybe more recognizable that can give her a little bit more of a push.
Yeah, and will it be worth it as far as maybe not doing exactly how we wanted to do? If they have another dumpster match, of course, Chelsea Green did lose the first one. I would think that she would get her revenge here, get the win here, but then you might be setting up for a third dumpster match because you got to get the tiebreaker out of the way.
No, not looking forward to that. But they've had some weird gimmicks between these two. I mean, as you said, Mishin is kind of, her thing is now she carries a Kindle stick around, and kind of just hits. And I mean, they're twerking everywhere. They're all doing that, and that's it's and the dumpster and I forgot the nickname they gave Chelsea, but yeah, she stank for like a month after that, and I think that's really what caused her. She played that so well. I think that's what really maybe might have decided the fact, they put this belt on her because they're like, hey, the fans really are behind her. Let's go ahead and do this. But yeah, no, we don't want another dumpster match, and I don't think we want a third one after that.
Well, and remember too, to go for that Money in the Bank, it pretty much came down to her and Tiffany Stratton, and I think that moment, and they booked it. I mean, but you kind of get the crowd's reaction out of it. It's like, we, at least as somebody watching, I was like, I don't care which one of those two you give it to. I will be uber excited for one or the other. And I want to see each of them kind of make this rise and have a time here. And so they're in a pretty good spot here. As we mentioned, Tiffany Stratton ends up, rounding out the show here on SmackDown as your women's champion. And then now you have the U.S. title over on SmackDown with Chelsea Green. That's entertaining.
Yeah.
That's some real entertaining stuff with some wrestlers that are kind of making the climb. So that'll be good. Looking forward into SmackDown in the next several weeks. Let's get to Paul Heyman's promo. He basically came out there, was kind of getting people ready and prepared for Roman Reigns in Solo to fight, of course, for the Ulafala and for head of the table, tribal chief, specifically for that group. Solo does hit the ring. He tells Heyman that he wants him to hold the Ulafala during the match, and basically Solo told him, if I win, you're going to be my wise man again, which is something interesting to do because he did have him power slam through the announcer's table at one point in time, but he might be coming to his senses, instead thinking, man, maybe it might be nice to have a wise man around. So kind of interesting. I think it's a weird kind of way to get about to it. I think ultimately they wanted Paul Heyman to hold the Ulafala. I think that's great visualization. I think it'll be crazy exciting on Netflix. But it was just kind of a weird way to get there.
And I think it's hilarious because they can do this a lot of other ways. Let's say Solo somehow wins. Paul Heyman could just run away with the Ulafala, right? Just not give it to him. They could turn that because, he's made it clear he never wants to align himself or work with Solo again, right? Because of the powerbomb. So they got that. But the other part about it for me is they're hyping this up. We haven't seen Roman Reigns since, it's been 3 weeks, has it? Maybe a month. So this has been kind of Solo and the rest of the bloodline carrying it, while Roman's name has just, it's just, hey, we've seen promos, right? But we haven't seen him in person doing much. So that's kind of another head scratcher, is they're building this up, but the other half of this is there. I thought it was supposed to be taken kind of like a serious moment, but I thought it was just funny. Because Paul Heyman was scared. He was like, last time I was here, you did this to me. He's like, I really don't want to be in the ring with you. I'm just here to kind of talk to you about this. So, but I'm intrigued by it, and especially now that we know, hey, The Rock's confirmed he's going to be, at Monday Night Raw. So we've been talking about when his involvement's going to come. Does he interfere? Because I think I saw a tweet where he was essentially stating something about being head of the table, right? And I think he did that about a year ago as well, before their match or before the Royal Rumble. So, hey, this match, you never know what could happen. There might not be a clean finish for it there. And The Rock finally interferes and we get kind of what we wanted.
Well, remember, and that's what it could be too. Again, is it makes a lot of sense to do it. You just don't necessarily trust WWE to do what makes sense. But at the same time, as we talk about too, sometimes wrestling can be predictable and be very good in predictability if that's the route they go. And I think that's the route that a lot of us want to see. I don't remember what it was. I think it was maybe a Premium Live event, maybe just a show. But when The Rock last made his appearance, he just came out and held, the 3-up. And everybody kind of thought, okay, Cody, Roman, myself at WrestleMania, Rock at WrestleMania. Maybe he was referring to Solo, Roman, and himself, fighting it out here for the tribal chief type of stuff. So it's definitely interesting. The Rock being back. I hope he interjects in that. Remember when he originally made his comeback, and I think he was it Austin Theory that he was fighting? The Bloodline stuff was going on. He kind of
tweeting with Austin,
married Austin Theory real quick. So hopefully we don't see him just kind of ignore the fact that there's a tribal chief thing going on. And I don't think he will. Like you said, in the tweet that he had that announced he was going to be there, he paid respect to some of the older wrestlers within that family. So I think he's definitely going to get involved there. That gives us plenty to talk about. Let's take a quick break. We are in the middle of our SmackDown review. We've got Raw review coming. And then we also are going to preview Raw on Netflix. So we'll do all that coming up next year. We're going to take a quick break on Nuclear Heat, our WWE Week in Review show, and be right back.
Who wants free diamonds? This holiday season, as a thank you for shopping with us, Sartor Heyman Jewelers is giving you free diamonds. Now through December 6th, receive a pair of sparkling diamond stud earrings, a stunning diamond pendant, or a gorgeous diamond tennis bracelet for free with your qualifying purchase. We only have a limited number to give away, so once they're gone, they're gone. Don't wait on this one. Visit Sartor Heyman Jewelers, where your gift shopping shines brighter. In Lincoln at South Point Mall, downtown, and in Grand Island on State Street.
At Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical, we're ready, reliable, and recommended. Water heater acting up or your sump pump on the fritz? Call Action. Summer's around the corner. Is your AC working? Are you sure? Call Action. Electrical problems? I'm telling you, call Action. Call Action for a free same-day estimate or a trusted second opinion. You heard that right, a free same-day estimate. 402-423-6960. ActionLincoln.com.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Couple Chevrolet GMC, wanting to thank you all again for your continued service. November is off and running. Check this out. Get up to $12,000 off or 0% financing on select new vehicles. We have great lease specials with new Trax and Trailblazers starting at $299 per month and new Blazer EVs leasing for $399. Great payments, discounts, and of course, 0% financing. So make that short drive down 144th Street or check us out online at couplecars.com. You'll be glad you did.
Back to Nuclear Heat with your host, Jake Bockoven on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
It's great to be back with you here from the Ticket Studios, 1040 O Street in Lincoln, Nebraska, talking about some WWE wrestling over the last week. Again, the build up to Raw on Netflix tomorrow night. So we'll have plenty more, to talk about next week when we get back to it. We are pretty much through SmackDown. We talked about just about everything that went on there. We've got one more thing to address before we jump into our Raw review for this past week, which was DIY versus Motor City Machine Guns. As you would imagine, with the talent in the ring, this was a good match. This is Awesome Chance starting. That's always kind of my measurement of whether it's a good match. If the crowd is chanting that, they're having fun. Yeah. But as predictable as it might be predictable, I should say, from early in the night where we saw DIY tell Pretty Deadly, hey, we need to come out of here as champions. And if we do, you can be the next ones, the first and the number one contenders moving forward. So Pretty Deadly comes out to help DIY. Angel and Berto are still frustrated again from earlier in the night after scrapping it out in the back that they want their hands on Pretty Deadly. And after, again, some close calls, some good matches, the fight between Angel and Berto and Pretty Deadly enters the ring, causing a disqualification. And therefore, DIY does leave the building as the champion. So I guess Pretty Deadly paid off on what they wanted to there. That's 4 tag teams that we're talking about. And I butchered earlier in the show because there's just a lot of names going on there. And again, the Street Profits as the 5th one tag team that could get or has been involved in this kind of these feuds kind of colliding all together. Can be a bit of a lot to be thrown at somebody, but at the same time, I like it better than sometimes the feuds where it's just, 50-50 booking back and forth for 2 months. And then you forget about the rest of the tag team division and think, well, who else is there? And then you have to kind of go through, all the tag team divisions, which again, at times can be lost in this company. Getting that screen time, moving to 3 hours again on SmackDown. They might need more out of them. I think is a good idea for WWE as it is now. All that being said, I think between the five, and they've done a pretty good job. Motor City Machine Gun kind of new, and so people are kind of excited about them. I just say between the five, the problem is I don't know if I have a favorite. I don't know if I necessarily have a overwhelming care factor for somebody to pay off and become champion.
Yeah, this could get very messy, but I'm kind of in a different feel here. I think this is fun. Like you said, you got more people involved, more tag teams, kind of some that you forget about. Like I forgot that Angel and Umberto were still even on the roster. I know that they're part of, that other group in there, but they haven't had anything serious, in I would say like a year or so. And then of course we know Pretty Deadly. We've talked about it. They're kind of just a fun gimmick, but to kind of have them involved, and then of course, Motor City Machine Gun. Is that?
Yep.
I think that's the name. I got it. I got it. Yep. I mean, we talk about them enough, and they, and all that. You hear it enough. Hopefully, it sticks. DIY and them. I think they could have fun with it. So, this is one of those. We've talked about the tag championships just aren't taken as serious, and if that's the way that Triple H and the WWE are going to go with it, you might as well have fun with it and start throwing things out like this. Just have 5 teams going at the same time, and who knows? Who knows who can win? Maybe get Angel and Umberto a chance at it and, see what they can do. I mean, the War Raiders are the Raw, tag team champs, so you can just give anybody the championships now.
That's right. I again, and that's where, like, to my comment earlier, I guess if I would be particularly interested in somebody winning, the tag team titles right now. Again, we've kind of seen it from DIY. Motor City Machine Gun is new, but they already kind of had it. Angel and Berto, it's interesting because they've just been in that group kind of put in the background behind Santos Escobar, who doesn't have anything going on. So, as a push for them might be nice. But more than anything, I think I would like to see Pretty Deadly come out as the champion. And I don't know if that helps take the tag team more seriously or is just kind of a funny, goofball moment. And I don't think they'd hold on to the championship for long. But I think at one point would like to see them kind of paid off for their entertainment that they put on a weekly basis. Would have loved, they went with, I think it was like 2 weeks where they were with Tiffany Stratton and they didn't really follow that up. I thought that would have been an excellent pairing. So there's a lot to do with them. And like I said, in-ring DIY and Motor City Machine Gun can go really well. So I think I'm having fun with this too. And we'll see where it lands. Again, that's my one problem with it is I'm not sure if I necessarily know what I'm supposed to be cheering for or hoping for kind of next, other than just a crowded division fighting it off. But again, I like a crowded division more than I like a 50-50 feud going back and forth. So I can't complain too much. We mentioned it before that this was then they had the Nia Jax and Naomi match. Tiffany Stratton gets the win there, or excuse me, cashes in and gets the championship. And of course, that's the biggest moment of SmackDown. We talked about it to the opening show. If you missed it, head to the Ticket FM after the show, or just rewind where you're at in a little bit later, and you can kind of get our thoughts on that. And then we quickly mentioned New Bloodline against OG Bloodline. Really long match. I thought this was kind of where they started to kind of feel the wear of 3 hours here, and ultimately ends with Solo hitting Jay with a Samoan spike for the win, which is what you need to do, especially Solo looking strong as the tribal chief going into this match on Netflix. It's just kind of interesting that before you reunite this bloodline and in the OG bloodline, that Sammy was kind of taken off, Jay was kind of taken off, and now, like you said, without Roman being there and having to put Solo over, they kind of have to take these losses leading up to it. And so it's just kind of the weakening. And I don't think it's going to hurt. I think the good thing is it doesn't necessarily hurt them. They're just as over. People are just as excited to see them again. But it does kind of feel like they're kind of still they're those two talents in particular, and Jimmy is not even to that level as a solo wrestler, right? One of the best tag teams ever, but they're just always kind of stuck in that upper middle tier, but not quite seen at the top. And this reuniting them probably hasn't done them necessarily well in that department.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I think we said that from the beginning. That was kind of the worry is they were going to be the guys that would take the pins because you can't have Roman. If Solo was going to come out looking strong, it wasn't going to be Roman taking those pins. Although he took one, but other than that, I mean,
which is even worse idea that they did.
Yeah, yeah. That's like pinning Cody Rhodes.
Which they've done too. Solo's gotten both of them. Yeah.
And things like that. We could kind of go on and on. They just make these mistakes on there and all that. But yeah, that's kind of the worry. And so, that's why I'm just really curious to see, what they're going to do on Monday. Will it be a clean finish? Because we know this is just going to be the start, of something new that's still going to be revolved around, the new and old bloodline. And like we said, hopefully The Rock and maybe some others on here. But I kind of to top it, when you said the 3 hour thing, this was kind of the worry about when SmackDown goes to 3 hours. It almost felt like this was unnecessary. Like you said, you could have ended it on that second hour with Tiffy winning the championship, it being Tiffy time. But instead, we kind of got some things we've seen, for the past 2 years, essentially, to kind of end the show. So that's kind of the worry, is that last hour just kind of, or one of the hours is going to kind of be just like a filler hour.
Yeah, but I mean, with the talent involved, I suppose you might probably kept you looking, because you never knew would Roman show up. Probably not The Rock, but you might have hopes or something like that. So talent involved, you can kind of keep you glued to the TV, but for the most part, was paint by the numbers there to finish out that. And I did have one point that I failed to make with Paul Heyman and Solo earlier, is that because you mentioned that Solo, came into the ring and Paul Heyman did his usual great acting job of seeming very, very scared. The problem and has been a problem with Solo, like we've said, as far as getting him over to be this monster heel, which they've done, giving him everything, right? We just said pins over Cody, pins over Roman, just to try to get you to believe that he is this, this challenger, is that his size comparative. I'm not sure if Paul Heyman doesn't have maybe a pound or two if they went into that match. They look the same size. And, there's times that Paul Heyman has, can do the acting job of looking scared with the CM Punk that's not all really big, but at least he's muscular. Solo looks kind of doughy. Paul Heyman looks kind of doughy. So when he was looking scared of him, I was going, hey, don't sell yourself short there, Paul. Just watch out for that finger to the throat. Otherwise, you might be able to go with him.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think Solo's like a legitimate maybe 6'2", 6'1". Paul didn't look that much shorter than him either at that, like you said, like that wise, but the other size, normally, guys, that's kind of always been the thing about Solo, right? Is they booked him so wrong. He was supposed to be this enforcer, kind of like what Jacobs come into, and they turned him into the jobber, the guy to take the pins. And now that, they've kind of made him somewhat believable, but, they put him next to Paul Heyman, who, like you said, that just didn't look great. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was kind of laughing at that too. And I'm like, Paul, maybe you, I don't know what they need to do there, but Paul can't be looking bigger than some of the other wrestlers he's trying to be.
Which is it's not a Paul problem. He's not very big. It's just, that's kind of what you have in wrestling. It's, that's part of it, is the visualization to see it there. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, again, we get all this payoff that we've been complaining about Solo for months now, and finally get this at Netflix. And it's not again, I think Solo's done a better job as this feud has kind of gone on, just within his acting. And I think they at some point decided and realized we can't take his character so seriously, because it's not necessarily connecting as well that way. So I thought they've done a good job of kind of shifting that a little bit. We've got Raw to review, and we've got Raw on Netflix to preview. So we'll try to get through this rather quickly. I got a few minutes so we can kind of separate it here. We opened up Raw last week with New Day actually interrupting the beginning of the show. And so they had Booz kind of drawing them out. I will note, and I thought that when Dom first had kind of Booz, overwhelm his microphone power, right?
Yeah.
I thought that he did well with it, but at a certain time, they noticed that it was something that was happening, and so they played into it, and that's kind of what the New Day did here as well. I think you kind of naturally, or maybe like you know, put the microphone a little bit back, but I don't like saying half a sentence, and it's not quite to they're booing, but it's not quite to the like drown you out level,
Yeah.
and they just stop and get frustrated, and it's like it kind of takes away from when, like I said with Dom, when it's really happening, when you're really having a trouble, communicating the promo that you need to get to. So that's kind of what they did here. And give Xavier Woods some credit. I think he tried to kind of get the crowd going a little bit more. But in any case, Jey Uso's music hits. He comes to the ring, starts the New Day sucks chance, but he was more focused on Drew McIntyre and calling him out. At this time, then Solo Sikoa appeared on the video screen, distracting Jey Uso, then allowing McIntyre to lay out Uso to close this thing out. Again, McIntyre kind of on his revenge tour. They would against the OG Bloodline, and they announced later in the night that they would have Jey Uso and Drew McIntyre at the Raw is Netflix here. I don't think I have to necessarily ask you who you think's going to win there. I'd be shocked if Jey comes out with a victory.
Yeah, it's not going to be Jey, unfortunately. On this one, they've done great work with him. He had his time, but like I said, he's kind of back to where he was. The guy taking the pins on there. So that's kind of where I am with that one. And I think with Drew, he's kind of just on this hot streak, right? He's taking out everybody that was aligned. He took out Sammy, Jey, kind of took out Jimmy. He's kind of targeting Cody. I think in order for this to kind of pay off when he does eventually get to Cody, he's got to be undefeated against the rest of the bloodline to make it feel legitimate, or possibly when he gets back to Roman, because that's where this is all leading to, is he wants his revenge on Roman. So, it's going to be Drew there. And I'm glad you mentioned the New Day thing, because that was kind of throwing me off. They were purposely stopping even before maybe boos happened. And you could tell like it wasn't edited correctly. And that the same to me, that kind of just got me the wrong way. And it just came off not as believable. And with the New Day, they have the ability to do that, as we said. But if they're going to do things like that, that's going to cool off some of that heat they've had, because it's not going to feel natural, like you said, like with the Dom.
Yeah, and luckily they did kind of set up a match later in the night with Rey Mysterio in LWO. And again, we've gone through how Rey Mysterio is perfect to kind of get heat on. That's how Dom did it, right? We have the natural reaction there, but just because he is everybody's ultimate underdog that they love to cheer for. So I think you'll see that happen. I think that's for tomorrow night. So we'll see. Again, this is Raw review last week, so they set it up for this week. So I think you'll see that tomorrow night again. Let's get into Otis against Chad Gable, the matchup we wanted several months ago. We actually finally get it here. Of course, Maxine Dupree, Akira Tozawa, Ivy Nile, and the Creed brothers all get involved. Ivy Nile particularly gets a distraction at the end that allows Gable to regain advantage of the matchup. Ankle lock Otis now for a second time. Gable wins as Otis taps out. I do like, it's not the most exciting way, a hold to kind of to end a match, but obviously there's the comparisons there, and there always will be, to Kurt Angle, and that being a match that's so effective there. So you got to pick your spots and allow Gable to win that way from time to time to, make it believable when he gets somebody like Cody Rhodes, in the ankle lock, to feel how devastating it is, with Otis having so much an interest, obviously, in this fight to stand up to Chad Gable. I just thought it was an effective way to do it. Again, there's lots to be talking about how they kind of missed their mark as far as the timing being hot for this one. Also, the crowd seems to be behind Otis and Maxine and Akira, so maybe there is something left over for them to do. But yeah, I thought an effective way. And again, I'm never going to get mad about pushing Chad Gable, and I like ending matches with his ankle lock to kind of put that move over.
Yeah, I agree. I said I wasn't as excited for this match, but I think it did good for him. I think maybe for both. Like you said, it even kind of feels like for the Alpha Academy that it's like a pity cheer, right? Like you feel bad for them. But hey, that's something. If you can get people to feel bad for you and start cheering for you naturally, you've done your job as a wrestler. And that's, not my experience, because, I've never been a wrestler, never will be, unfortunately. On there, that's just kind of, the point of view of a fan on there. But yeah, it seems like it worked out for there, because, with Chad, we talked about, you mentioned it a million times, Kurt Angle. He's Kurt Angle 2.0, should have been his legitimate son, this and that, all that. They have a chance to do some great stuff with him. But, I thought this was an effective way to kind of put both of them over again, and kind of remind us that, Alpha Academy, they're kind of bad on their luck. Maybe let's get something going for them. And Chad Gable, he's kind of this dominant wrestler, that can break your ankle, and almost broke Cody Rhodes. So, I thought this was a good way to kind of keep both of them going and get some heat on one and kind of some sympathy for the other.
Yeah, real quickly, R-Truth attacked by Pete Dunne before the match ever began. Pete Dunne said, "I'm nobody's butch." So not much to say about that. Just kind of moving that one along. Dakota Kai and Zoe Stark for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. But again, we're going to go a little bit quick, maybe less analysis on each one of those. Kai ends up beating Zoe Stark. Good match between the two. But obviously, this punches Dakota Kai into the Women's Intercontinental Championship semifinal. And we'd see Lyra Valkyria and Io Sky later in the night, possibly all Damage Control final. I'll just go ahead and as we kind of pair those together, Lyra Valkyria actually beat Io Sky after a good match with plenty of near falls. So big win for Lyra Valkyria, and the Intercontinental Championship matchup will be Dakota Kai against Lyra Valkyria here. Two women that need it. So I thought that's kind of interesting. Io Sky, you maybe could have argued, should be in the final one way or the other. If you wanted to be Valkyria against Sky, you could have changed the bracket in that way, because I think that would really put whoever won over Sky, and that would be kind of a big win for them. But it does feel like for both these characters, Valkyria and Kai, this would be the biggest moment of their career. And so when you have a match with those stakes on the line, it should set up for some pretty good entertainment.
Yeah, it should. And I think they went the right route with this. My pick has been Dakota Kai. I think I would like to see her. She's a little bit older. She's kind of been around, but Valkyria, Lyra, they've kind of pushed her to the moon, when it comes to tournaments. I mean, runner up like in 3 different events in the not even year she's been on the roster. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they gave it to her, but yeah, I think this was, a great thing. And I think it's gonna be a good final. But I'm going for Dakota Kai. I'd like to see her in Damage Control, get the mid-card title there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like that too, if that's what they go with, but they certainly do like Valkyria. So we'll see if it goes that way. Let's take a quick break. We got to quickly talk about Judgment Day's new music, because that's about all that was interesting there in my mind. Ludwig Kaiser and Sheamus going back after it, and of course Punk and Rollins promo at the end, and then just give our predictions for what we'll see tomorrow night on Netflix. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back here on Nuclear Heat.
Slay the holidays this year with a gift that'll really get them going. One that's built to win, like the new Honda CRF-R Motocrosser. One that's built for fun, like a Honda Mini Moto. Or one for each member of the family, like a Honda CRF Trail Bike. At Rod's Power Sports, you'll find the motorcycle, ATV, or side-by-side they'll love. During the Honda Gifts That Go sales event, you can slay the streets in style with a Grom Mini Moto, slay the trails with the CRF 50F, or pile into a Pioneer 1006 Deluxe Crew that can carry 6 elves over the fields and through the woods all year long. This year, don't just give any gift. Give the gift of outdoor adventure with a ride they'll never forget. Don't miss out. Head to Rod's Power Sports in Lincoln, Nebraska during the Honda Gifts That Go sales event. It's your chance to slay the holidays and your gift list. Dealer participation may vary. See dealer for complete program and safety details.
Back to Nuclear Heat with your host, Jake Bockoven on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Jake Bockoven and Augie Payne here with you on Nuclear Heat, our WWE Week in Review show, closing out the show with a few events from last week's Monday Night Raw, and then previewing Raw on Netflix. January 6th is tomorrow night, and it will be big. Some big returns there. We'll get to that in just a second. Like I said, just the few things we did miss so far on our Raw review was Damian Priest and the War Raiders against the Judgment Day. Judgment Day has some new music. Not a particularly good music choice, if you ask me, but at least it kind of separates them from the Damian Priest era, if you will, of the Judgment Day. Plus, for those who think that the Judgment Day may break up soon, maybe, they wouldn't go into this trouble to get them some new music right before breaking them up. So we'll have to see there. After all, Judgment Day was kind of snarky with one another once again this week. Priest ends up hitting South of Heaven for the win over Dom Mysterio. Finn Balor then clips Priest, and they have a after match beatdown. The Judgment Day tries to. Then you have the War Raiders making the save. So kind of started, kind of exactly where you started, I think, the night between Damian Priest, the War Raiders, and Judgment Day. But what any thoughts on this? I don't think I think this was just continuing the feud.
Yeah, this was, I mean, just another, bump in the road for them. They're gonna go all the way to WrestleMania. It's gonna happen. This is unfortunately something like that. So yeah, not much other than it happened.
Yeah, and we'll see what the War Raiders. You should have a rematch between War Raiders and Judgment Day. Maybe at some point for those titles. So that's also kind of going on along with the Damian Priest against Finn Balor deal. So I hate to say it because I love the Judgment Day, but this story is just kind of wearing on, and I want to see something new to it. War Raiders is new, I guess, but it might just not be enough for me. Who again, we kind of bash for being the tag team champions. I like the War Raiders. I like them as live entertainment, especially, but I don't know if they can quite entertain as much, kind of outside the ring. Again, we just never know what we expect. What do War Raiders do from their 9 to 5? It's interesting. I'm just not really sure.
At least they're not the Viking War Raiders anymore.
That's right.
They dropped the Viking gimmick. They're a little bit more on the we can appreciate them a little bit more side.
Which shout out to I think Wade Barrett at least, who said Raw is war, to get that back with them. I mean, that could be something that can kind of get him over a little bit more as well. My guy Ludwig Kaiser there comes out. Sounds like he's introducing Gunther. Instead swerves and says that he is one of the top dogs in the company. Calls out Braun Breaker. Instead, Sheamus comes out. Each of these have injured each other. Each of these guys have injured each other. I believe maybe both ribs, at least in the storyline. I'd have to go back and try to think about that. But in any case, for extended period of time that they've had to sit out, so kind of sparked that one back up. Sheamus, Ludwig Kaiser, always going to put on a good match. So looking forward to that. And then we finished the night with CM Punk and Seth Rollins. No topics, off limit. Really just airing the dirty laundry. They talked about children, not having children specifically in CM Punk's case. They talked about leaving the company, the arrows on CM Punk's back for being, a leader in that, and Rollins having to carry the company torch there for the longest time. CM Punk even mentioned Vince McMahon, not by name, but said that the leader of the company for 7 years, or the leader of the company, did not necessarily like him, but loved Rollins. And he also threw out there, not verbatim in these words, but something to the degree of, for 7 years during your matches, they chanted for me with the CM Punk chants, which I was wildly entertained about. I think there was a mystique to CM Punk that I didn't quite get, because I wasn't necessarily the biggest wrestling fan during CM Punk's run. I heard about the pipe bomb. I was trying to kind of figure out who the guy was when I returned to wrestling. And it was kind of at the height of CM Punk chants when I returned. I was like, man, this crowd just loved this guy. So I thought that was one of the coolest things of wrestling while he wasn't there. But Punk, Rollins, I don't think this is ending anytime soon, but they're going to at least begin this tomorrow night on Netflix.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can tell these guys don't like each other. They maybe have a professional respect for each other now that they're both in the WWE. But let me tell you something. If you weren't there for CM Punk's original run, you missed it. That was great. That pipe bomb was phenomenal. It felt super unscripted, everything there. So it was fun to see him go from, the guy that wanted Money in the Bank cashed in, there to kind of rise up, and then eventually leave the company as he did, and everything, and to just come back, and he's one of the top guys in wrestling, has been phenomenal. And then, we've wanted this feud. This was supposed to be the feud last year. And now we're finally getting it. And man, this promo, just everything they did. I rewatched it the next day when I was, running some errands and just listening to it. I'm like, gosh, this is what it's all about. Kind of like with Cody and Kevin, what they did about a month ago. This is amazing. This is what kind of catches you back into it, on there. And I'm excited to see what they do tomorrow, because, if one of them does get a clean win, doesn't, you kind of want this match to, this feud to go on, because man, they caught fire with it on Monday night.
And so originally too, I was all excited about Raw on Netflix because of the matches. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. Maybe there's some wear and tear on that one, but I mean, that's one of the feuds of the year. Roman and Solo, we finally get, to the head of the table business, tribal chief business. That's excellent. And then CM Punk and Rollins really got you going. And so I was very excited about that. And then over the last couple of days, I've been more excited because of the leaks they've had of who's returning. The Rock, as we mentioned earlier, could get into the Roman Solo stuff. Again, if he doesn't, it's going to be massively disappointing if they put him in any other angle. So I'm expecting that to go down. John Cena starts his farewell tour, which is going to be highly talked about, every move that they do on shows like this, because there's only so many matches left and there's only so many opponents left for John Cena to go out, that we're going to have our own opinions about, which one of those guys takes those spots. So we might get the answer to that tomorrow night. And then Logan Paul returning. I know he might not be as big of a name as those in wrestling, but he is a huge name outside of wrestling. And I'm sure that's going to help kind of bring in some people that are on the fence about, tuning into Netflix and seeing what this is all about. Also interested to see, kind of what's next for him there. Remember, he took out LA Knight took him out. They traded taking each other out, but LA Knight took him out for the U.S. title. And so maybe he could, kind of be back into that, though I don't think that will be there for tomorrow night. So maybe something new for Paul, something new for Cena, and The Rock getting into the feud that we all want him to get into. Could all happen on one night. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. And I want to tell you this. If The Rock doesn't get involved with the bloodline, the one thing I'd be okay with is if he did something with John Cena to kind of kickstart his farewell. That'd be the only thing. But other than that, yes, I'm super excited. I think I've heard rumors that the Man is coming back too tomorrow. It might be when she comes back. So, that brings some life to that. And yeah, just super excited. I already subscribed to Netflix again. I'm all ready for it. So yeah, super excited for Raw to be on Netflix and, this new era to begin and all these names. Yeah.
The only problem I have is that Netflix has kind of came down on all those people sharing their passcodes. So I'm going to have to see it tomorrow night. Don't tell Netflix if my friend's passcode is going to still let me in, or I might have to pay to watch it, but we'll see. I already pay for Peacock. So I guess Netflix could just join on me there for that. So thanks again, Augie, for joining us tonight. A lot of fun. We'll talk about everything that goes down on Raw tomorrow night, as well as SmackDown next week on Nuclear Heat. Thanks again to you for listening. And that'll wrap it up for 93.7 Ticket programming tonight as well, actually. So stay tuned to Early Break tomorrow. We'll send it to national program after this.